Right, cool. Yeah, so as Justine said, we're talking about inspirational men in sustainability that we found in advance of International Men's Day on Sunday. So Finn, if you just click on this is a brief overview of who we're going to be talking about. Obviously, we're going to go into more depth, but yeah, if you might recognize some of the names, you should recognize some of the names. Others you may not know, but we'll talk through them in the next half an hour or so.
Yeah, and these are our sustainability topics that we're kind of going to cover. The ones with the tick, we have tried our hardest to try and tick them all off. So hopefully you'll see that throughout. And then starting off with Elon Musk, as you probably all know from the numerous Teslas that sit outside our office. Yes, he is the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, and more recently Twitter, but that's a story for another day. He has developed Tesla cars to help reduce the carbon emissions from transportation, and he is an outspoken advocate for reducing individual carbon footprints and making conscious lifestyle choices, as we all should be doing. And a quote recently that Elon said was, "Climate change is the biggest threat that humanity faces this century." And probably when you take a step back and look at the way that we've been using our resources over the past probably 10, 20 years, he's probably not far wrong from this quote. And his advocacy for sustainability extends beyond transportation. He aims to transform the way we generate and consume power through renewable energy. He's outlined his vision for a global switch to electric vehicles in a recent presentation. And this is all driven by $10 trillion in spending to develop sustainable energy worldwide. And Elon kind of did a forecast, and he's forecast that this will be $4 trillion less than the projected 14 trillion we're going to spend over the next 20 years in fossil fuels. And then just to leave you on the last little quote that he said at this presentation on Wednesday, it was, "Earth will move to a sustainable energy economy, and it will happen in your lifetime." I'm not sure if that's my lifetime or someone else's lifetime, but he stands by this, and that's what he's working towards.
So the inspirational man in sustainability that I've looked into is Sir Richard Branson. So I'll just give you a quick background of what he's done across his career. So in 1970, he started his first small business in the basement of a church, and then 8 years later, he's a multimillionaire and owned his own private island. Then in 2000, he was knighted for his services to entrepreneurship, and in 2007 was titled Citizen of the World. And today he's a multimillionaire with a business empire worth billions. So what has he been doing in the sustainability sector? So under his many businesses, he's got Virgin Unite, which was founded back in 2004 and acts as a non-profit organisation which unites people and entrepreneurial ideas to create opportunities to make the world better. So we're just going to have a quick look into some of what comes under this umbrella. So one of these that he's been working with is the Rocky Mountain Institute. So this is a US-based NGO, and it's addressing the climate crisis, mainly focusing on energy production, which accounts for 70% of global greenhouse emissions today. In 2014, Richard Branson and the team in the Carbon War Room merged with the RMI, which founded to accelerate low carbon solutions. They work with businesses, policymakers, and communities to hopefully reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 50% by 2030. Their approach to doing so is think bigger, do boldly, and scale globally by applying research and market-based solutions. So one of the projects that they're working on is to tackle the top 3 most carbon polluting countries. So of course, this is a massive issue that Richard and the team are working on. So they're tackling China, US, and India. And in China, they're working to reduce to hopefully peak the CO2 emissions before 2030 and looking to achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. So what Richard and the team are doing, they're developing carbon roadmaps, working with governments to accelerate development of breakthrough technologies and hopefully preparing the markets for this transition to the renewable energies. In the US, they're working with policymakers and in state and Senate level, and working to support the US clean energy and climate movement, and also working with Congress to hopefully to follow through on these policies. And in India, they're doing the same. They're working with the policymakers and looking into the resilient energy and mobility systems. They're helping to break down the barriers and enable large-scale development of clean technologies across the country, and also working again with policymakers to build this commitment. And why is Richard Branson so inspirational? It's because he could be sitting on this island drinking a cocktail, but no, he's out here trying to tackle these climate problems head on.
So my inspirational man is slightly less well known. He is called Pete Kiglinski, and he is an Australian-born surfer with a background in product design and yacht building. He spent a year traveling the world and saw firsthand how pollution, and plastic pollution specifically, is damaging our oceans and our beaches, and wanted to make a difference. So in 2014, he became the CEO and co-founded the Seabin Project and Foundation with Andrew Turton. And together they came up with the revolutionary idea to clean up our oceans pollution through a floating rubbish bin designed to catch litter, oil, fuel, detergent, and microplastics down to 2 millimeters in size. After 4 very successful years, he was awarded the Australian Advanced Sustainability Award. However, after unprecedented growth, it actually became unsustainable for them to maintain it for such a small business. And so in 2020, they opted to go for a 2-tiered business approach, where they had a leasing strategy for sea bins for profit conservation, and then created at the same time the Seabin Foundation, which is a non-for-profit foundation following a similar model to that of Patagonia, which will be later discussed. And then in 2022, he was named in Australia's top 10 innovators, and the overall theme is to clean 100 cities by 2050. So what is the Seabin? So the Seabin is essentially a floating rubbish bin, and it has the ability to filter 1.3 million litres of water a day. And over the course of a year, this equates to 474.5 million litres. So they are installed in marinas, ports, and yacht clubs, where they have much calmer waters, because the idea is to collect litter and polluting materials before they enter the wider ocean, then are much more difficult to catch. So they work by a solar-powered submersible water pump that pulls in the top 10 millimeters of surface water, and this captures in the body of the bin any litter, floating pollutants, and even the smallest of microplastics. And the larger containers, such as 20-litre containers that come off vessels, are pulled to the top of the bin and then can be collected later on. All debris that is collected is then either recycled or is taken to a managed waste facility. And the most commonly caught objects are cigarette butts and plastic fragments. So the Seabin Foundation is the non-for-profit fundraising organisation that is also part of the company, and it invests in education, science, research, and community projects. In order to invest in education, their in-house scientists provide school field trips and STEM lessons, where they educate children, adults, and anyone who's happy to listen about the importance of marine ecosystems, from biodiversity, climate regulation, carbon sequestration, and nutrient cycling. And they also educate children on the responsible use of plastics and how to dispose of them responsibly, such as recycling. And they're actually partnered with Upschool, which is one of their biggest investors, which is an education platform similar to the UK's BBC Bitesize. And it essentially provides an access point for anyone who wants to learn more about oceans and recycling. It's funded by donations and sponsorship packages. So rather than making governments and town councils invest large chunks of money at once, it operates a leasing scheme. So you can lease a sea bin for your local port or harbour for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then in return they get advertising and social media presence, so that councils are allowed to show their local communities what they're doing to achieve a greener environment. And they also have in their largest cities, such as Sydney and Los Angeles, ocean health labs, where all the microplastics and the data that is collected from these sea bins are then analysed in order to help with policy changes and environmental monitoring going forward. So this is really promising for the future. And they also, on weekends, are open to the public, so that the public can go in and get directly involved with analysing the plastics and help identify trends going forward for the future. And the collective aim of the Seabin Foundation is to turn off the pollution tap through behavioural change.
So I've chosen Leonardo DiCaprio for my inspirational man. He's an actor and environmentalist, and he's really looking to make a change within the sustainability world. In 1998, he set up his own foundation, and this was a non-profit organisation in the aid of providing initiatives to provide a more sustainable future for our planet. Within this time, he provided over $100 million in grants to 200 projects. These were projects focused on conservation and climate activism. And then in 2021, it was relaunched as Rewild. This was Leonardo DiCaprio and the Global Wildlife Conservation, both parties creating this, and it's combining more than 3 decades of knowledge and experience within the sustainability world. Both parties have great partnerships, excellent expertise and platforms to help fight against sustainability issues. They operate worldwide, and Rewild have over 460 million acres in active conservation with partners. Leonardo DiCaprio sits on the board of several organisations, including Natural Resource Defence Council, Global Green USA, and the International Fund for Animal Welfare, just to name a few. And then over on the right-hand side, he isn't just investing in plant-based companies. He's also an investor and advisor for 2 pioneering cell-based meat companies. And both these companies are producing animal meat through non-slaughter or harmful environmental impacts. As well as this, he's helping to revolutionise fast food through strategic thinking for Neat Burger chain. Neat Burger is a company founded by Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton, and Leonardo DiCaprio has helped him with the new launch of the new branch in the US. And as well as this, Leo is also investing in solar companies, one being Kingo, in which they provide low-cost solar kits for off-grid communities. And as the company goes forward with more projects, he's going to be advising these projects going forward. And then as well as this, he has lots of awards and recognition from the public, one just being in 2014, he was presented with the Clinton Global Citizen Award for his recognised environmental work. And this came a month after he donated over 4 million to ocean conservation. And then lastly, he is continuously building long-standing relationships with great leaders and thinkers of the planet to keep fighting against sustainability issues and make a change.
So this is Yvonne Chouinard, who is an American rock climber, philanthropist, and environmentalist, which is strange to say when he's in that order, when he's also the founder of Patagonia and was named in 2023 as one of Forbes' top 100 most influential people in the world. But he's a self-professed reluctant businessman and is an outdoorsy man and has always loved the outdoors. And it was born out of it was from this love of the outdoors that all of his sustainable thinking's come from. His first company was set up to build rock climbing equipment, and he noticed fairly early on that the steel pegs they use to attach ropes to, they were damaging the rock face and making cracks in the rocks even bigger. So he developed an aluminium chock that would go in these cracks already and didn't damage the rock face and left exactly as it intended. And from that point forward, he committed his company at that time to clean climbing and intended to leave the environment exactly as he found it. So it's strange to think that from that he developed a clothing company that everyone knows and loves, that is Patagonia. It was officially founded in 1973, but he started selling clothes in 1970 in Scotland, selling rugby shirts to other climbers, which at the time he found it reduced a lot of the rub on his neck and other parts of his body that were exposed with the rugby shirts collars. He could sell it to other climbers, and it was revolutionary, and he just decided that clothing was the way forward. From the very early stages of Patagonia, he made a commitment to use it as a source for his environmental activism. For as early as 1996, he went against the grain in America and committed to 100% organic cotton, which, although it was more expensive than the typical industry used cotton, it had a much reduced carbon footprint. From the start as well, he committed a lot of his money and profits towards helping the environment. He was one of the original people to do this, and before it became an initiative in 2002, he committed 1% of all of his total sales, or 10% of total profits, whichever was higher, towards environmental schemes that would help the planet. He then became a founding member, and Patagonia was the initial company that signed up to the 1% for the Planet initiative in 2002. And since then it's grown, and companies that sign up commit to donate 1% of their total sales towards pre-approved environmental partner charities, which go through the board and ensure that they have a direct impact on the environment. As well as this, Patagonia also commits to a worn wear scheme, which gave birth to the great Black Friday ad that you can see on the screen of "Don't buy this jacket." And what they intended with this scheme was to reduce the need to buy clothes and instead repair what you already have, or repair secondhand clothes. And what they did is they offered either a trade-in scheme where you could send in damaged or worn clothing that they'd repair in return for 50% of the original value off another item of clothing, or they offered DIY tips on how to repair it yourself, and they'd offer free kits to repair it yourself and all of the tips online about how you can repair the clothing yourself. This was aimed to try and reduce the amount of clothing that was incinerated or ended up in landfill, which in America in 2018 was 85% of total clothing that had been sold. And even today, you can see his vision of it being used for activism just by clicking on their website. They have a page called Patagonia Action Works, which is at the top under activism on their website. And it has a whole section filled with petitions you can sign, causes to support, things you can get involved with online from all over the world that they aim to try and support through the company. And recently, he made an unprecedented move for any billionaire these days. They get a bad rep, but he is probably the only billionaire that has done it and will do it in the future. And he transferred the ownership of his company and all of his family's shares in the company away towards two separate trusts with the aim of helping the environment. This is around 100 million a year, and 98% of it is going solely towards environmental schemes, whether that be rewilding, changing electrical needs, and reducing carbon emissions. And the other 2% he's putting towards legal means, which mean nobody who is involved in the company can change the way that is structured, and the company will continue to carry this out for the rest of its existence. He hopes that by doing this, it's going to spur a new age of capitalism, one that isn't centered around your own personal needs and making as much money as possible, but instead one that puts as much money as possible into saving the planet.
So moving on from, or following on from that, should I say, I decided to take a look at a brand instead of a specific person. So I'm looking at the Swedish clothing brand Asket, which was founded by Augustus Baird Brejers and Jacob Dvorsky, who are two guys from Sweden who the tagline is "The Pursuit of Less." So they put together this idea of basically a capsule wardrobe, where you only have the clothes that you need rather than just buying and buying and buying new clothes. They had four kind of pillars that built this company up: meaningful essentials, which is only the garments we need; restoring value and appreciation for clothing; choosing better; and making the pieces we invest in count. And the aim behind that is to make the most out of the wardrobe you've got, rather than constantly following or chasing the newest trend. and using a kind of fast fashion ideal. The next one was zero compromise. So they were farm to factory focused. They locate the finest natural materials and partner exclusively with skilled, responsible mills and manufacturers. They've got an extended size system so that they've replaced the standardized system with the extended system, taking into account that we're all built differently and providing more people with a better fit. Because if your clothes fit better, you're more likely to wear them and use them and make the most out of them. And direct to consumer. So they don't do wholesale distribution. They don't do discounts and sales. They're just creating the lasting quality at the right price. The next pillar was full transparency. This is actually a really interesting concept because they focused on origin, impact, and cost. So everything that you buy from them, you can trace back to their roots, learn about every factory and every touch point that they pass. Their impact is all about this idea of the impact receipt. So every time you place an order with them, as part of your receipt, you get a list of the CO2 impact of the clothing that you've bought and the cost to the world behind that. So the impact of that CO2 that you've produced. And then the final one is cost. So they have nothing to hide. They show exactly what you cost to make that product, and it helps people understand why they're paying a bit more for clothing that's got higher quality. And the final part was the life cycle responsibility. It's similar to that of Patagonia, where they're trying to push people to care for their items better with extensive garment care guides, helping to prolong the life of the clothes. Repair, so when they break, you can get a repair kit or you can get advice online on how to fix things. And if that's not what you want to do, when you're finished with the item, they'll revive, so they'll buy it back by giving you a discount off buying a new item, and then will ensure that that item of clothing can get a second life. So we've just got some resources at the end there. Thank you very much for everyone coming to listen to our talk about men. Has anyone got any questions? Anything they'd like to know more about? No?
I have a question, Finn.
Oh.
How did you all choose your gentleman that you have decided to champion today?
I actually find it quite difficult. I think some people will remember that we did a similar presentation to this on women in sustainability. And I think it would be fair to say that they're much more advertised than men, because we're trying to push to hear more about women's voices, so you can get a lot of articles about interesting women and that sort of thing, whereas with men you had to search a little bit deeper. I personally decided to go a little bit off-piste because I thought about the concept of something that people could actually engage with, rather than something really big that is like out there and it's kind of like, oh yeah, they do that, but I can't really do anything with that. Whereas a clothing brand, you know, you can make choices yourself on what clothes you buy. So that was how I just decided.
I think similar for a lot of us as well. I think some of us decided to go more wide range and more well-known names, but maybe not the environmental impact as such. But I think some of the more off the beaten track ones is more to raise awareness of some of the smaller projects that are going on in particular, and how their sort of world is being impacted in lots of different ways by lots of different people at all sorts of various levels of involvement.
We also discussed about wanting a variety of household names and more obscure ones, because it's interesting to hear about people that you do know as well as people that you don't.
I was going to say, sorry, carry on.
I was just going to ask you, is there any males in this organisation that have particularly inspired you? Sorry, that's a really harsh question, I know.
I think there was, we did toy with the idea of including Simon in this, but we thought it might be, unfortunately, a bit too close to home for a lot of people, and it might be perceived as sucking up to the head of the business. So we decided to leave that one out. But X-Links is worth a look. If anyone has 5 minutes today, just look it up. It's a really interesting project, and yeah, this bit can be deleted from the recording and never replayed again, but it's definitely worth a look when you get a second.
Maybe
I
we'll invite
think
X-Links to come and meet us.
Fab, has anyone got any other questions? No?
Fabulous. Well, well done, Finn. Well done, guys. And Phoebe, thank you so much. So absolutely fantastic. Really interesting. I only knew about, I think, 2.5 of those people. So I'd kind of heard of one name, but didn't really know a huge amount, the Patagonia piece. Obviously, I know about Richard Branson, having worked for him previously in a former life. And then obviously we all know about Elon because we all drive around in electric cars or have the opportunity to within ground control. But some really interesting stuff there and information that I didn't know about any of them. So really fascinating. Thank you so much for the hard work that you put into today, because I know it doesn't just happen. You have to go and research and find out about it. And I'm certainly going away with a lot more information than I came onto the call with, and I'm sure that everyone else has too. Has some fabulous information in the chat. So Charlotte said very interesting. Thank you. Sophie said really interesting and a diverse group of men. Great job. Sophie said, great job, guys. Hannah has said, thanks, everyone. Great job. And Philip has said, excellent, inspiring selection. We'll be looking into with great curiosity. Well done and thank you. And I think that goes from everyone on the call today. So a big well done and thank you. And we'll be back again next Wednesday with our next session. All right, then, guys. Thanks ever so much. Have a great day. See you soon.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.